let's start with Indian architecture. So the very first evidence of Indian architecture that we could trace back goes to the Indus Valley civilization. Which is based off river Sindhu Saraswati. So the civilizations are Harappan, Mohenjo-daro. These two are in present-day Pakistan. Or the Sindh region. Then we have Dholavir, which is in Gujarat. And finally Rakigiri at Haryana. Now important features of all these civilization is first is they are walled city and were based on a grid layout. The planning of the city was based on a grid, and they had advanced drainage system. Which is like all the residential drainage is connected to a smaller line, and then that is connected to the main lane. That kind of advanced drainage system. They had private well and bathroom. And a lot of houses were also found with staircase, which means they were at least 2-story high. The houses were 2-story high. And if we talk about the important structures, they had granaries and they had great bath. And recent findings at Lothal in Gujarat, the excavation team find the remains of a dockyard, which adds to the fact that most of the trade was done by sea. And most of the residences had doors on the side lanes, so that most of the dust doesn't enter the houses. So this was about the Indus Valley civilization. Then we can go on to Mauryan period. I'm not gonna explain in detail about the Mauryan period, just that certain things that were said about Mauryan period is it was deeply influenced by the Persian and Greek. And they also said the capital of Mauryan Empire, which is Patliputra, was said to be much more grandeur than the cities of Persian cities, which is like Susa and Ekbatana. And most of this influence can be seen in their columns as well. Like they had animal capitals and other reliefs. And we all know that Mauryan period had a transition in the religious system, which is Ashoka was deeply influenced by Buddhism, and he built a lot of stupas around the country, and he built a lot of monolith stone pillars as well, and these stone pillars were inscribed by the teachings of Dharma. Now, one example for the column that I would like to point out is our emblem, which is the lion capital of Sarnath pillar. It is a Mauryan column, and now let me talk about stupa. So stupa is an earth mound covered with burnt bricks or stones. So this is nothing but mud, earth. It's an earth mound, and on top of it bricks or stones were placed to form the stupa. Now the parts of a stupa are, this is our dome, which was called anda or dome. This is our harmika, and these stuff, they are called chhatri, and the vertical shaft that goes through the chhatri is called yashti. Then this is our ambulatory passage, which is called midhi. Then we have tornas, which is our gateway or ceremonial gateway, whatever they called it, and it was present in all four directions. So this is your one torna, you have another one here, you have another one here, and another one on the rear side. So that is torna. And then we have our stamba or the pillar, which is present in here. Then these are the staircase that leads to the midhi or the ambulatory passage, and the staircase are called sopana. And the entire railing is called vedika. Now if you see the railing up close, so this is your main thing, and then you have upright vertical element and a horizontal element. Now these vertical elements were called thamba, and these horizontal elements, they were called suchi. Okay, so these are the parts of a stupa, and stupa is nothing but an earth mound covered with stone or burnt bricks, and this is basically their shrine. And if you see about the development of stupa or how it started off, we had 3 school periods, school of architecture. So one is the mix of Greek plus Indian, which brings us to the Gandhara style. Gandhara style or Gandhara school. And other indigenous styles that were present were the Mathura school and Amaravati school. Now Gandhara style was a lot more decorative, and it had lifelike statues of Buddha. Had rich ornamentations. And used materials like stone, terracotta, clay, etc. If you see Mathura style, this looked more spiritual. It had a more spiritual feel compared to the Gandhara style. And it also was made using red spotted stone. And you can also find some of Jain deities in here. Now Amaravati was mostly in the regions of Andhra and those region, and this was also decorative. You could see bas relief on the walls of the stupa. Now what is bas relief means? These are like embossment, but not like very heavy. These are like the carvings are slightly coming out of the wall and not like very high, such as in high relief. So that is bas relief on walls. And they also had a lot of decorations. And one added feature of the Amaravati stupa is the Ayaka platform. So this is a platform that protrudes from the anda or the dome, and it has 5 pillars on it, and the Ayaka platform is present in all four cardinal directions. So if this is my stupa, it protrudes here, and protrudes on the back side. So this protrudes on 4 cardinal directions. From the dome, and has 5 Ayaka pillars. Now these 5 Ayaka pillars represent the 5 important events in the life of Buddha, that is his birth, him letting go of his wealth and everything, that is his renunciation, his enlightenment, his first sermon, and finally his death, which they call as parinirvana. Parinirvana. And that's about the stupa. And you can find stupa at each of the thing except the renunciation. Like for his birth, there's a stupa at Lumbini, and for his enlightenment, which is at Gaya, there is another stupa. You can find another stupa. And that is for his first sermon, you can find a stupa at Sarnath. And lastly, for Parinirvana, you can find one at Kushinagar. This has nothing to do with Amravati school, though. I'm just like mentioning the stupas found that is related to the important events in the life of Buddha. So that is there. Then we can move on to the other structures of Buddhist architecture. But before that, so you can see this is Gandhara school. And this is our lion capital. And this is the red spotted stone from the Mathura style. The Amravati is ruined now, so you can find sketches of how it used to look online. Then we can move on to Chaitya and Vihara. So the classic distinction between them is Chaitya hall is for teaching and interaction with the common people. Well, this is where they stayed. So if you see Chaitya hall, and most of the Chaitya halls were carved out of caves. So you can find examples of it in Ajanta and Ellora of Maharashtra or Udayagiri caves of Orissa. You can find them in all of those places. So a basic plan and drawing. So this is your they had a stupa here and columns. So this was their stupa. This being the nave. And their aisle. If you see a cross section, so this was a barrel vault. Inside, and all these columns had the mixture of Persian and Greek to it. So they had a vase shaped base with an octagonal shaft and some animal capital. So they had capital had mostly animals, and this is octagonal shaft with a vase base. This is an example of that, and here you can see the barrel walls with the animal capital, octagonal shaft and vase shaped base. and you have your stupa here. So this is Chaitya halls, and Chaitya halls you can find examples in Ajanta and Ellora caves, which is present at Maharashtra. This also has 29 Buddhist caves. Like it's along a river as such, and all these structures, it amounts to 29 Buddhist caves. Then you can have an example of Udayakari caves, which is in Orissa. Now we can talk about Vihara. So Vihara is the place where they stayed, and it was more rectangular or rectilinear or square. So it's rectilinear in plan. So you could say that they had a shrine here and a central hall, and the central hall was flanked by cells on all the sides where the monks stayed. So that is about Buddhist architecture. So let's start with temple architecture of India. So this can be segregated into two subcategories mainly, which is the Nagara style in north and the Dravidian style in the south. There are other sub-styles as well. We'll talk about that later. But these are the main two categories, and combining them gives you the Vesara style. So the early temple architecture that was, seen or found dates back to the Gupta dynasty. So this is where the temple architecture started evolving. So most of the early temples of the Gupta dynasties had flat roof, and they had very simple structures. One example is this temple This is temple 17 at Sanchi, and you can see this flat roof, and this had nothing but just the Garbhagriha. There was no other mandapas or other spaces found in the temple. This is just Garbhagriha, and it was flat. The porch, the attached porch to it, had 4 columns. That was in the influence of Mauryan architecture, which meant the capitals had bells and lions. Then the later stage is, you can find an example of that in Parvati temple. And Parvati temple is present in Madhya Pradesh, MP. Okay, so this is present in Madhya Pradesh, and at this stage, I'm talking about stages. So initially it was just flat roofed, nothing, rectangular planning, very simple structure, just Garbhagriha. Then they started having circumambulatory spaces. In fact, Parvati temple is, the oldest temple recorded to have an enclosed circumambulatory space. So this had an enclosed circumambulatory space. Circumambulatory space is the where you go around the Garbhagriha. It is the Pradarshana, where you take the Pradarshana. Then we have an example of the Dashavadar temple, which is in ruins now. In Deoghar. And Dashavadar temple said to have Nava, sorry, not Nava, it has said to have Sarvobhatra planning. Sarvotobhatra. I'll talk about all this Sarvotobhatra and other terminologies like this a bit later, but remember the term that this temple had Sarvotobhatra style. And the most evolved temple that you can find in the Gupta dynasty is this, which is Bitragon temple. And it is made of terracotta. And this is Gop temple, another example of Gupta period in Gujarat. That is said to have these, it's a very different style of the Nagara thing, because they said to have these arch windows in its shikara. So that's very unique about it. And then this is our Mundeshwari Devi temple in Bihar. And this is our first temple that is said to have an octagonal planning. So this has an octagonal plan. The first temple to have octagonal plan. Then we can move on to the other substyle of Nagara, which is Kalinga. Now Kalinga style is predominantly found in and around Orissa. So this is a typical elevation. No, before the elevation, let me start with the planning. So the first space that you enter is your Artha Mandapa. Then you have your Mandapa, and then Antrala, which is like an antechamber, and then your Garbhagriha. Now if you look at the elevation, the Shikara is called Devula in Orissa, or the Kalinga style. So Shikara is something that is present on top of the Garbhagriha. So Shikara is the superstructure on top of Garbhagriha. So in Kalinga, you can have three substyles of it, that is based upon the Shikara style. So they had Reka Devula, or it's also called as Reka Pida, or Rataka Devula, Rataka Devula. And this is nothing but when the superstructure or the shikara goes on a straight line and curves only at the top, it's known as Reka Devula, Reka Pida, or Rataka Devula. So this is your Reka Devula. And this is based on a square base. So for example, you have a square base and the top all goes in a straight line with just the top part alone curving. So that is Reka Devula or Reka Pida or Rataka Devula. And if it has a square base but it goes in a pyramidical shape, then this is called Pida Devula. If it has a rectilinear plan and the shikara somehow represents element, it kind of looks like the Dravidian style, something like this with a truncated pyramid, something like this, then this is called Kakra Devula. So most of the Pida Devula structures are found in for the mandapas, mostly not in the Garbhagrahas. They are for the mandapas, like for the dancing mandapa or the food offering mandapas. And the Kakara Devula is present mostly for the female god. And I'll talk about the other parts here now. So this is our Amalaka, which is like a circular stone, Amalaka, and above that is our Kalash. And this portion in the middle is called Rahapaga. The whole structure is elevated above the ground, and that is called Pusta. And this is your Pida Jagan Mohan. Now Pida Jagan Mohan is the it's a hall for worshippers. So I'll write that here. And the first temple to have a Jagamohan is the Parashurama temple in Bhuvaneshwar. Parashurameshwar temple. Is the first temple to have Jagamohana. Then, so this is Jagamohana, we talked about that. And in this part of the Shikara or the Devula, if you see, you have some vertical horizontal inscription followed by a circular disc. Now this disc is called Amala and this is called Bhumi. Let me show you example. So this is an example of Reka Devula. Our Jagannath temple. in Bhubaneswar, Lingaraja temple, all are example of Reka Devula. And here you can see these discs. These are Amala, and these inscriptions are Bhumi. This circular stone or disc, this circular stone or disc is Amalaka, and this is our Kalash. This is Pida Devula example. Now this is a classic example of Pida Devula. You can see it here. Square base with pyramidal roof, pyramidal shikar. So this is an example of the Konark temple, Sun Konark temple at Puri. And the example for Kakara Devula is Baitala temple. Baitala Devula temple. And you can see it having a truncated pyramidal shape. So these are the three categories of Kalinga style. Now we can move on to other. Now in Madhya Pradesh there is a region called Bundelkhand, which is ruled by Chandela people or Chandela rulers, and they developed a temple style called as the Khajuraho style. So Khajuraho temple style, or Khajuraho temples generally, and they are made by the Chandela rulers of the Bundelkhand region of Madhya Pradesh. I'm telling this because sometimes Khajuraho temple style could also be asked as Chandela or the Bundelkhand region's temple style, so that's why I'm telling it. Key features of the Khajuraho temple is the presence of Urushringas. Now Urushringas are the tiny shikaras that are attached to the main shikaras. So these are your Urushringas. Then other feature is, it had a lot of erotic carvings on it. And this entire temple is elevated above the ground, and the base of it is called Adisthana. Which is the base elevated from the ground. Now this is an example of the Kandarya temple. And also these temples are inscribed in the UNESCO sites now, so they are of importance. And another temple example that I want to mention is the Vishwanath temple. Then the last style of the Nagara that I want to talk about is Solanki style. These are mostly found in the regions of Rajasthan and Gujarat. They are different from the typical Nagara style by the presence of stepped water tank, or basically water tanks. Most of the Nagara style temples does not have a water tank in its complex, and the only water tanks that is mostly present in the north side, are in the Rajasthan and the Gujarat region, which is the Solanki style. So this is an example of the Sun temple at Modhera, Gujarat, which is in Gujarat, and this is an example of the Dilwara Jain temple, which is in Mount Abu, Rajasthan. So that is about the Nagara style. Now we can move on to Dravidian. So Dravidian temple architecture, you can say that it was initially started by the Pallavas, and then a lot of work is done by the Cholas. It's mostly flourished by Cholas, and then it was followed by the Pandya. So in Pallava architecture, you can find two categories. One is rock cut or cave kind of structures, and the other is the freestanding temple. Now, before diving deeper into that, let me talk about the typical features of a Dravidian architecture. The entrance gate, or the entrance gate, mostly has a huge pyramidal roof on it, which is called as the Gopuram. So you enter, and initially you have the sacrificial altar, or it is called as one second, let me Bali Pitam. Yeah, so this is called Bali Pitam, or the sacrificial altar. Then you have your Dvajastamba, which is basically nothing but a pillar. And then you enter, you have your Mandapa, Artha Mandapa, Antrala, and everything. So this is all your Artha Mandapa. I'll talk about that later. Let's just call this as Mandapa now. Then this is your Garbhagriha. The superstructure above it, especially this portion, it's called Vimana. And above Vimana, this region is called Shikara or Kapola. And above Shikara, you have your Kalash. So if you see in plan, you have your Gopuram, you have your Bali Pitam, you have your Dvajastamba, this is your Artha Mandapa, this is Mandapa. Mandapa, or sometimes it's even called as Mahamandapa. So Mandapa, Antrala, and Garbhagriha. And almost all Dravidian temples have a water tank in them. And these temples are mostly enclosed by walls. So you have walls around, and usually there are other small shrines or other mandabas are present. So these are your other mandabas or smaller shrines. So example is, let's start with Pallava. So in Pallava, I told you that initially they were rock cut or caves, and then came the freestanding temples. So for rock cut or caves, you have a classic example from the Pallava period is the Pancha Rathas of Mahabalipuram. Now they are carved out of granite, and important things about the Pancharathas is it represents the Pandavas, and it also had a small shrine for Draupadi. So the biggest shrine is for Yudhishthir. Bhima's shrine is mostly influenced by the Buddhist architecture, so it's heavily influenced by Buddhist architecture. And we have Arjuna. Nakala and Sahadeva had one shrine common. So Nakula and Sahadeva had one shrine in common. Then Draupadi had a hut-like shrine. So this you can see is Draupadi's. So this is hut-like, and this is the smallest of all. And this is Bhima, and you can see it kind of resembles the Chaitya halls of Buddhist architecture. So that is about the Pancharathas. Then came the freestanding temples of Pallava period, and this is an example of Kailasanatha temple in Kanchipuram. Then temple at Kanchipuram. And another example for Pallava period would be the shore temple at Mahabalipuram. So this is an example of Chola architecture. So after Pallavas, Cholas empire flourished a lot. So most of the temples that you'll find belongs to the Chola period. And this is the Brihadishwara temple. So other temples include Gangaikonda Cholapuram, etc. By the way, this is also inscribed in the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Then comes our Pandya period, which is mostly in the regions of Madurai, and it is also called as the Nayaka style. So Madurai, this is Madurai Meenakshi Amman temple. And there is one thing that is very famous about this temple is that it had 1,000 pillared hall. Now there are two very distinctive features that belongs to the Nayaka style, which is these. So these are found in the pillars, and this is called Yali. I'm not sure if it is Yali or Yazhi. So Yali. And Yali, it is a mixture of elephant plus part lion plus part horse. So you can see an elephant here, and this, if you take fully, is a lion, but if you stop it here, it's if you take fully, it's an elephant. If you stop it here, it's a lion. And then another pillar that is famous is a warrior riding a horse. So these pillars are famous in the Nagara style of Dravidian architecture. Then we can move on to the Vesara style. So firstly, Vesara style is the mixture of Nagara plus Dravidian. And it was mostly in the Karnataka region. And it had two dynasties using that style. That is, one is first came Chalukya, and then Hoysala. So these two dynasties are the one that use Vesara style a lot. So this is an example for Chalukya style. So Chalukya style is the one that started first, and whole Hoysala dynasty used it in the later period. So this is Ladkan temple in Aihole. Then this is Durga temple, again at Aihole. And you can see this Durga temple is again heavily influenced by the Buddhist architecture. You can say the Chaitya kind of thing that's going on. So also influenced by Buddhist architecture. And Ladkan temple can be said as one of the first temples under the Chalukya period. So you can see a very small shikara coming up. Then came our Hoysalas, and they were famous for making they were famous for having star shaped plants. So they had stuff, something like this going on. So this is an example. It's called the Chennakeshwara temple. Chennakeshwara temple at Somnathpur. So these are Vesara style. Then we have other styles that is present in the Bengal region. So Bengal temples are mostly made of terracotta. So they don't have a particular name. So terracotta temples of Bengal. As I said, mostly they are made of terracotta, but they also, so they had Nagara style in them, yes, but they also used a lot of Islamic elements in them. Okay. So they had again 3 styles under them. So first we'll talk about Jor Bangla. So Jor Bangla are the temples that had a curved roof. So they had a curved roof, and this curved roof is said to be inspired from the local residential roofs that are made of bamboo. So they are inspired from the curved roof forms of the bamboo poles, made of bamboo poles. Like most of the village huts used bamboo poles, and that is what inspired the curved roof of Jor Bangla. So if you have one such hut, it's called Ek Bangla. I'm messing up the spelling. It's called Ek Bangla or Do Chala. And if you have 2 such huts, one being the mandapa and the other being the shrine or the Garbhagraha, it is called Jor Bangla or the Char Chala. So Ek Bangla or Do Chala is the one hut alone, and Jor Bangla or Char Chala is 2 huts with one being the mandapa or the porch and the other being the shrine. So this is mostly, it's not mandapa, it's a porch. So yeah, that is there. So this is Jor Bangla. As you can see, you have 2 huts here. So it's Jor Bangla. So they had Jor Bangla, which is inspired from the bamboo poles of traditional huts, and it has a curved roof. Then came Ratna style. Ratna style or pinnacle style. So the main feature of this is it had a central tower and 4 towers at the corner of it. So if it had just 1 tower, then it is known as Ekaratna, and if it had 4 towers supporting it, then with the one being the central, then it is Pancharatna. There is also a very rare category, but it is not mostly seen in a lot of spaces, which is the Navaratna, which is nothing but Pancharatna, but in a 2-story level. So you have tower, and then you go 1 floor above, 1 story above, you have another tower, and again the central huge tower. So that is Navaratna. And this is Ratna style. An example for this is the Shamrai temple. So this is Shamrai temple. At Vishnupur. another temple for the Ratna style or the Pancharatna style is Gokul Chand temple. Then we have our flat roofed temple, which are called as Dalan. So Dalan is the flat roofed temple, and these have their famous three entrances, curved entrances, and they also have clustered or octagonal pillars. So and sometimes they also had internal domes or vaults. So this is Dalan. So Bengal style had Bengal style had three categories under them. One is Jor Bangla, which is a curved roof that is inspired from the bamboo poles of traditional huts. And if it had one hut, it's called Ek Bangala or Do Chala. And if it had two huts, one being the porch and one being the shrine, it is called Jor Bangla or Char Chala. Then comes the Ratna style, which is nothing but towers that are present as the superstructure of the Garbhagriha. So if it has just one tower at the center, it's called Ekaratna. If it has the main tower supported by 4 other sub towers, then it is called Pancharatna. And if it has 9 towers, that is called as Navaratna, and it is usually in 2-story level. So then comes Dalan, which is flat roofed temple, and these have their classic that is present in almost all the other temple style as well, which is the 3 entrances. They have octagonal or clustered pillar. They have internal domes or walls. Then we can move on to the last temple style that I have, which is the Nilachal type. And these are mainly present in the regions of Assam, and they are an inspiration of the Mughal architecture plus Nagara. So the classic feature that can be found in the Nilachal style is that they have a cruciform Ratha or the base, which is also called as Bada sometimes. On top of it, they have hemispherical domes, which is a feature that is taken from the Mughal architecture. So they have hemispherical domes. So one example of this is the Kamakya temple. It's Kamakya temple at Guwahati. And here you can see these what are cruciform? I've already talked about that when I was explaining cruciform piers of the Renaissance period, but let's go. So something like this is the cruciform. So this has a cruciform base with a hemispherical dome. That is the classical feature of Nilachal style, which is predominantly found in the Assam region. So now that I've explained about the different styles of temple architecture, there are other important terminologies or features that I would like to explain. So sometimes the temples can be classified based upon the ambulatory path and also upon the number of facets that is divided into the shikara or sometimes even the walls of the Garbhagriha. So based on ambulatory path, which is the pradeshana. if your temple has an ambulatory path. Why am I drawing? Okay, if your temple has an ambulatory path, then that is called Sandara planning. So if it has ambulatory path. And if your temple does not have an ambulatory path, it is called Nirandara does not have ambulatory path. And if your temple has ambulatory path but in the all four direction, then it is called Sarvobhatra. Four entrances in the cardinal direction. So for example, it's usually square plans. So this could be your shrine or Garbhagriha, and you have entrances from all four sides, and you do have a ambulatory pathway. So plus ambulatory pathway. So this is based upon the ambulatory pathway. Another is based on the number of facets in the shikara, or sometimes and or. So sometimes it's there, sometimes it is not. So and or the walls of Garbhagriha. So what does this mean is, sometimes the shikara or even the wall are divided into parts. These are called facets. So if you have 3 facets on one surface, then it's 3 ratha. So for example, say this side is divided into 3, this side is divided now into 3, this is divided into 3, and this is divided into 3. So you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So this is 3 ratha. In case if it is divided into 5 segments, it's called Pancharatha. And if it is divided into 7 segments, it's called Saptaratha. And if it's divided into 9 segments, it's called Navaratha. This is Ratha, remember that, and it is different from the Ratna style of Bengal. Okay, we've talked about Ratha, we have also talked about the ambulatory passage. There is one more thing that I want to talk about, which is the grid. Okay, so most of the temple styles, planning are done on a 8x8 grid. Which is 64, and this 8x8 grid is called Manduka. And sometimes for larger structures they use a 9 into 9 grid, which is 81 squares, and this grid is called Paramashayika. So that is another, this has been asked quite some time in GATE, so that's why I wanna emphasize on it. And we are done with Indian temple architecture.